Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about covered calls. And today, hopefully I'm going to do my best to explain this as simply as possible and explain the benefits of or the upsides of using a covered call. I think in my personal opinion, it's a very safe strategy. It's something that is very lucrative or has been helpful for me within this past year, and it's something that I really enjoyed in terms of a money-making strategy or stock strategy. Now that said, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. So if you just know that this is more for education, and if you're interested in learning about stocks, feel free to stay tuned. But just a deep dive, a little bit more into the stock market. Let's kind of take a step back and know that the stock market is inherent with risk. We know that the stocks don't necessarily mean that your investments are always going to go up or increase. There's always the chance that you can lose money. But I think that people don't traditionally think of stocks like stocks losing you money in every sense. So we know that if you were to buy a stock and that stock were to decrease by 50%, or let's say the stock were to go bankrupt, obviously then in that case you were to lose money. But there's also other avenues for you to potentially lose money, even if it weren't to go down. And what do I mean by that? Another way that you could lose money is that if the stock were to stay flat. So let's say, for example, if that stock, let's say, if you invest, $1,000, $5,000 of your money into a stock, and over weeks, months, even years, potentially, the stock stays relatively flat. And I don't mean that it doesn't move. But let's say it moves relatively very little, like maybe 1% every few months to 2%. So it doesn't really move with the market, which is about 10% per year. And all that money that you've had is pretty much the same over the next few, let's call it years. Now that is actually a money loss. And there's two ways that I can explain that. One of it is known as opportunity cost. And what do I mean by that? Opportunity cost is by taking that money, by investing it into that stock that stagnated over that certain period of time. You lost the opportunity to be able to invest it elsewhere to invest it. Let's say, for example, in a stock like Nvidia, which just, skyrocketed to the moon. And there was a lot of money to be made with that stock, maybe like Apple, Amazon, and so forth. Berkshire Hathaway. There's a lot of stocks where they've made more money, let's say, for example, than your example stock that stayed stagnant over a certain time period. And so that's the opportunity cost that we feel sometimes when our stocks don't do as well. And that is a way to lose money, or it's a way to have loss. Now, in a financial sense, it's if your stock were to stay relatively flat, it's also a way to lose money. Now this is the second interpretation, and that's due to inflation. We know that inflation is always present anywhere from 2 to 4% per year. And we see that in the events where, merchandise becomes a lot more expensive. Groceries, rent, things that we buy become more expensive. So essentially, your purchasing power decreases, or the money in your pocket is less valuable. As time goes on, $1 in the 1980s is a lot more valuable than $1 in 2025. And that's because of inflation. So if your stocks were to stay flat over a period of time, then you were to lose money due to inflation. It's like if you had just kept that money in a mattress. Essentially so. For this reason, I like to say that normally there's a 1/3 chance of profit within the stock market, because only if the stock that you buy goes up in price will you see some kind of profit. So if you buy a $10 stock and it goes up to $11, then that's great. That's a 10% profit, and that's where you see some profits to be made. But in the other two avenues, whether it stays flat, and obviously if it were to go down, then you're looking at a loss of money. And this is kind of a simplistic way to look at it. I understand that I'm not a statistician, so this is not accurate in terms of percentages. But just given these three options, that's how I kind of like to look at it. Just traditionally buying stock. It's a bit less likely, I guess, to make money just because you have to have your stock go up in order for you to make money, right? So the very, very simple basics. Now what about the covered call? The covered call, I see it differently. Because there's over a 2/3 chance of profit in the view that I explained to you earlier with the traditional stocks. if we were to hold that over to the covered call, we're kind of to look at it through that same lens, but for the covered call, there's actually over a 2/3 chance of profit. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, to talk a little bit about the covered call, it's still a bullish position. You're still hoping that the stock price goes up. So in this case, obviously if the stock price goes up, you still make money on the covered call. So whether the stock price goes up on in the traditional sense of holding the stock, or whether it's through a covered call, you're still gonna make money. Now, what's different about this is, let's say if the stock were to stay flat. If a stock were to stay flat in a traditional sense, you're having that opportunity cost. You're losing money to inflation. But in a covered call situation, you're actually gaining premium. So there's something called premium, which you get kind of paid as a reward for selling covered calls. And if the stock were to stay flat, then every single week, you could sell that covered call. When it expires, you go ahead, and the next week you make that same sell. You make that same sell, and you keep repeating this. So I tend to prefer this strategy when stocks do stay flat, and I love it when stocks stay flat, because then I can keep using this strategy. Just keep breaking in the premium. And it's in that sense very lucrative because I'm usually picking it with stocks that are at a good price range. I feel that they're, solid picks, and I feel like they're undervalued. And if they stay undervalued, let's say if it's a $10, it should be a $10 stock, but it's a $6. And I can rent it out every single day, I like to say. Rent it out, but selling covered calls, I can rent it out every single week, and collect the premiums on it. And I feel very comfortable with it because I know it's still at or I feel that it's still at an undervalued price, and I can just collect premiums all day every day. And so, if it stays flat, I make money. Now what about the third scenario? I put it in light blue only because it's conditional. You can make money even when the stock were to go down. And this doesn't mean you always make money, but you can make money depending on how much it went down. And we're going to talk about this in an actual example in just a moment. But let's say, for example, as a premium, you get about $1 for your stock premium, which translates to about $100 in actual and inactual premium, because each covered call is 100 shares. But let's say you get $1, and let's say the stock price over the certain period of time that you rented it out goes down about 50 cents. Well, it went down 50 cents, and you were given $1. And so in that instance, even though it went down 50 cents, you were paid more than that 50-cent decrease. So I would still make money. Now if it goes down enough, let's say it goes down 20%, 30%, 50%, right? There's not really a chance that you're going to get 50% premium on selling a covered call. So generally, if it goes down enough, you're still going to lose money if the stock price goes down. However, you're going to lose less money than if you had not entered the covered call position. And so it's always really beneficial in all three situations. Now let's go through an actual example. Let's look at the case where we want to sell a covered call. So in order for us to do that, we have to buy first 100 shares of a stock. So in this example, I'm just going to pick a random stock, Sophie. So I'm going to buy 100 shares of Sophie at $10 per share. Now that means that I had to invest $1,000, or that's my equity in the market, $1,000 for Sophie. That's my one covered call. The next determining factor is for that covered call. How long have I selected until expiration? In this case, I'm going to pick about 1 month expiration. So assuming today, from when I post my video, January 12th, 2025, it's going to end in 1 month. Roughly 1 month, I should say, which is going to be on a Friday, February 14th. Oh, actually just realized, that's Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's or happy early Valentine's to anyone who's watching this video. So it ends on February 14th. So for holding that or selling that covered call to someone for 1 month, they pay me something in return. And what they pay me is, in this example, is $1 with the premium, $1 for every $10 for every share that I purchased in that covered call, which is 100 shares. Another way to say that is the premium is $1 per share or $100 total. So now, regardless of how you split it, it's 10% profit. So if the stock were to go up, I would make 10%. If the stock were to stay flat, I would make 10%. And actually we'll go through these scenarios a little bit more. But this 10% profit is actually pretty realistic for SoFi, because the stock price is $14 with SoFi right now. And if you were to sell the covered call until February 14th, they'll give you about $1.40 worth of premium. So $1.40 divided by 14, that's a 10% profit. So these numbers are actually pretty accurate. They're just changed a little bit around to make the math simpler. But anyways, let's go through the 3 scenarios in more detail because I feel I glossed over it. So let's assume that I purchased the shares at $10, and that's today, January 12th, and I'm willing to get rid of them February 14th at $10. So if I were to do that the same day, the same moment, like I bought it at 10 and I sold it at 10, I would make no money. I would lose no money because I would buy it at 10 and I would sell it at 10. Obviously, right? There's nothing to gain, nothing to lose. But if I were to buy it for $10 on January 12th today, and I were to sell it for $10 on February 14th, I would actually gain 10%, even though it didn't move at all. And what happens is, and that's because I sold it at a strike price of $10. Essentially, I'm saying I'm willing to sell it at $10, even though I bought it at $10, and they'll pay me on my contract $1 premium. So even if the stock price were to go up, so like let's say, for example, the stock price goes up to $11, $12, $20, even $1 million per share. It doesn't matter what price it goes up, no matter how much it goes up. I'm limited to that 10% profit. Now, some people might say that that's kind of one of the cons. That is part of the opportunity cost, I guess. And that's because, let's say, the stock did go to $1 million per share. Well, you wouldn't get all of that ridiculous profit. You wouldn't be a multimillionaire. In that instance, you would only get that 10% profit. You would secure it, you lock it in. But, being a bit more realistic about the market, it would be nice to have the market be like a lottery, where there's instances where, it's really easy to become a millionaire. But generally, that doesn't tend to happen. For example, like the GameStop and all of the AMC's Bed Bath. And beyond all of these kind of meme stocks that went up dramatically in a short period of time. Those aren't the norm. Those are very rare kind of instances. Generally, the market as a whole goes up around 10% a year. And so to have that profit locked in for 10% in 1 month is actually pretty astronomical. That's pretty significant. And so that is a good way to kind of reframe your thinking, as well as being able to mitigate risk. And what I mean by that is generally you want to be able to not only kind of secure wins, but you want to be able to prevent losses when you're investing. Because it's not ideally when you're investing, it's not a gambling game. It's something where you're looking to hopefully, over the long term, make money consistently. And then this is one way in which I feel that I can do so by selling covered calls. So once again, no matter what price they were to go up, you were to get 10% in this scenario. Now if the stock were to stay flat, let's say in 1 month it's still $10. Well, they would cash me out. They would give me back the $1,000, and I still get my premium. I still get my $100 premium, or $1 of premium, which is 10%. So I still make money, regardless of if it goes up, or regardless of if it stays flat. 10%. And that's excellent. Now what about the situation where it goes down? The situation where it goes down, there's still the opportunity to make money. Now let's go through these examples. So if it were to go down to $9, so it went from $10 to $9 in 1 month, I would actually lose no money at all. And you might say, how is that the case? Well, I did purchase it at $10 and now it's down to $9, so I lost $1. But they paid me $1 per share. So I offset the loss I was able to recover because what they paid me canceled out with what it went down. So even if it goes down to 9% or $9, I lose nothing now, or instances where I can make money. Well, what if it goes down? But if it doesn't go down to $9, but it goes down to like $9.50, if it goes down to $9.50, then I still made a profit. The reason being is that my shares are worth $950 a share. I still have 100 shares, So that's $950 plus the $100 of premium. That's 10 or 1,050. So I actually still made $50. In that instance, I made 5% of my money, even if it were to go down $1. And that's fantastic. So in those instances, if it goes down, I still make money. However, let's say it were to go down below $9, right below my break-even point. So it goes down to $8. And if it were to go down to $8, I would still be losing money because I bought it at 10, and then in 1 month, it's at $8. But I was paid $1 at premium, which means that it's more like I had bought it at 9. And right now, it's currently at 8. So instead of being down 20%, I'm more down around 10%. So that's how covered calls protect me. Even if the stock price were to go down, because I'm not losing 20%, I'm only losing about 10% in that 1 month. So this, in a nutshell, is why I think covered calls give you more than a 2/3 chance of profiting in the market. It gives you that chance to be able to mitigate risk, lock in the wins, and kind of protect yourself from the losses. And I'll be going into more detail about these 3 specific scenarios: going up, staying flat, going down, kind of how I position myself in those instances. But I hope that this made sense, and that this is something that may be interested in you into looking into, and potentially as a strategy that you feel that could be something that may help you gain profits once again. This is not financial advice, but I love talking about stocks, and I hope you love listening about them. If you do love talking about stocks as well, feel free to kind of share that in the comments. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. And thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I appreciate it.